This 100-acre, $650 million landfill is being dug out and licensed to be filled with radioactive and hazardous waste, including contaminated debris, equipment, and soil, part of a multi-billion-dollar cleanup of the Portsmouth Gaseous Diffusion Plant, or PORTS, a massive Cold War facility in Pike County that for decades enriched uranium for America's nuclear bombs. The U.S. Department of Energy, or DOE, which oversees ports, insists when completed and capped in 2030, this cutting-edge landfill will seal in the radioactive and toxic threat for up to 1,000 years. But the mayor of the nearby village of Piketon, Billy Spencer, says there were cracks in that plan from the time the landfill was proposed.
The bedrock was fractured.
In DOE's own studies, fractures to the bedrock below the landfill are repeatedly noted. That's important because while the landfill has layers including a liner, compressed clay, and pipes to carry leach water away, the bedrock under the landfill serves as a last line of defense to stop contamination from seeping into aquifers below. In its findings, DOE states the bedrock fractures aren't deep enough to present a risk, writing, at depths greater than 20 feet, the bedrock was found to be intact with no fractures or cracks. After DOE held an official groundbreaking for the new landfill in 2016, Mayor Spencer, along with the village council, began asking questions. You jump in and say, wait a minute.
Yep, we did a resolution and we sent it to DOE, and all we asked for was give us some information.
But the mayor says DOE never responded.
No information, no contact. They really just kind of blacked us out.
So the mayor and council decided to do their own digging, hiring the Ferguson Group, a strategic consulting firm out of Washington, D.C., to conduct an independent investigation.
Their whole assignment from us was to basically find out the truth.
In this report, published on June 21st, 2017, a much different picture beneath the landfill emerged. The Ferguson Group found fractures running deeper than 20 feet in approximately 50% of the land area of the landfill, in some cases as deep as 77 feet, raising serious questions about how groundwater flow and contaminant transport occur in fractured bedrock.
The bedrock is fractured, and it's just too wet here.
The findings led to a stunning conclusion that the fractures could cause a release of radioactive and hazardous waste to the groundwater and surface water. The recommendation from Ferguson and Piketon was clear, writing in the report, "We respectfully request DOE find alternative remedies for disposal of wastes from the port site." In other words, the village of Piketon asked DOE to stop building the landfill. And you heard nothing back?
Crickets, nothing.
So they didn't care?
They just didn't care, and they don't care to this day. I believe that.
I sent a lengthy email to DOE with in-depth questions about issues raised by the Ferguson report. A spokesperson wrote back, stating DOE's environmental management plans to dispose of the vast majority of the site's radioactive inventory outside of the state of Ohio, adding, the Portsmouth on-site waste disposal facility provides a safe means to dispose of waste, such as building debris and lightly contaminated soil. The short statement did not answer my many other questions about the fractures and if they could allow contamination of water sources. Many others here in this small county say they don't get answers either. Did they listen to you?
No, they didn't.
Community activists like Gina Doyle say they were met with the same silence.
They don't care. They don't care what the public thinks.
Even DOE's former Assistant Secretary of Environmental Management, Ann White, who was in charge of nationwide cleanup, says a radioactive landfill at ports was a bad idea. Should that landfill have ever been built?
My opinion, no.
But White, who was appointed in 2018, says she arrived too late to stop it.
By the time I was there, we were in too deep, and the nugatory costs could not be overcome.
While Mayor Spencer says Piketon couldn't continue to fight the federal government, he now worries radioactive and other toxic waste now being dumped at the landfill will eventually contaminate water that Piketon and countless communities tap.
I think at some point this will be an environmental disaster.
Dwayne Pullman, Local 12 News.
WKRC's Dwayne Pullman joins us for a discussion. What you just watched, well, it was part 2 of his ongoing investigation in Pike County. Now, you know something, Dwayne, that I've just been thinking about. What sticks with me when it comes to the story is when White says that she arrived, quote, too late to stop it. With that loom of an environmental disaster, is it really too late to stop?
Well, she was referring to what she called nugatory costs. To break that down, that just means the spending that had already happened. And when it comes down to it, she was the former assistant secretary in charge of environmental management, which means she was overseeing all of the cleanup sites across America related to the nuclear facilities, mostly bomb-making facilities like Portsmouth. And she said at that point, so much money had been spent, there is no way you can do anything about it, that the plans had already been made, the site was built, and to a certain extent, some things were already being filled in that landfill. So from that perspective, Ann White was right. She couldn't do much about that at that point. But and that brings us to where we are right here. The reporting of what's going on out there in all aspects that I've encountered, you know, with dozens of investigative reports, a lot of the damage has already been done. Unfortunately, that is true. And in terms of the landfill at this point, you have an entire massive building, the debris from that, all of the contaminated debris already in the landfill and other items, and it is a massive landfill that's already been filled. So at this point, Ohio and this region has inherited this problem. And what she was just trying to point out is it is too late to go back now.
Thank you for the transparency on that. And like you said, the damage, to some degree, it is already done. I mean, after speaking with the mayor, after speaking with the residents, is there any kind of fear that's being built up? Not only because you just mentioned that there's damage already being done, but you're also met with so much silence to some of these important questions.
Yeah, silence comes from the government. Yeah, I can tell you, in Pike County, Ohio, and beyond, the level of fear is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's equivalent to a version of post-traumatic stress for most of the people I deal with. These are people who have lost family members to rare forms of cancer, leukemia, children dying at rates that should not be in an environment like that. So if you talk about fear, every day in Pike County for many of the people is one of fear of what comes next for my family. And I guess the obvious question, Peyton, is so why not just move? You got to remember we're dealing with a section of Ohio that's called Appalachia. And I know that resonates with the people of West Virginia. In many cases, this is a forgotten land. And these people feel that they are forgotten. And the one thing I hear over and over from people in Pike County, Ohio and beyond is they don't really care about us. That's expressed over and over again.
What a powerful message to be able to say those words and to be able to speak that. You know, you're already mentioning that there's death, there's cancer, there's, you know, a certain level of PTSD. That's what's present right now. What do you see as a ripple effect in the future right now for these people?
Well, the workers at these plants many years ago got coverage for a list of cancers and other ailments. So in other words, the government, if they can prove it, they get compensation for being exposed to these radioactive elements that they were working around. It was part of the Atomic Workers Act, and it was a presidential thing. What has happened, though, is in what I've been covering is this is a community that, by and large, the people I'm talking to have nothing to do with the plant. They are suffering on their position and their statements. They're suffering from no other reason than where they live. And in the reporting that I've done, we picked up levels of radioactive elements, including plutonium elements, 10 plus miles from the plant. And that's proven. And so the issue right now is the government says, no problem, everything's safe, no health threat, you don't have to worry about anything. But if the government concedes that there is a contamination that is affecting people and causing them to get cancer and die, that is an enormous cost that they would have to face. And I think at the end of the equation here, it's really about an assessment of the cost itself, money.
So last question for you, Dwayne, with what you just mentioned, what's next? What's next when it comes to that?
So in terms of what's next, it runs the gamut. The question that I'm trying to concentrate on is, what is the solution? And I think that's where we all face as journalists. What is the solution to something this massive, this horrible? And from this standpoint, I will tell you what Ann White, the former assistant secretary, told me, and I agree with her. What needs to occur is a truly independent study, a public health study of what is going on, and that should include an assessment of if there are radioactive elements contaminating actual people. That has not been done. So right now we are beginning, and I've been leading the charge to get a community health assessment, so we get the names and we get all the cancers, and then we move it into the next phase of truly answering the question of the effects, because that has not been done by the government agencies, and that shocks me. So the question has lingered for generations, decades, and there is no answer as to, okay, what is the radioactive contamination among people, and what are these cancers, and what can be tied to it? That needs to happen.
It really is exactly what you said, Dwayne. Shocking. Thank you so much for just providing transparency and giving us more detail on this. And you guys can find more details on his findings at WCHS-TV.com.